Hello everybody, my name is Tom from MGG Radio. I'm gonna throw up a game with this deck, so I figured I should probably do a deck tech with it. Makes a lot of sense. This is an idea straight from Trevor of MGG Radio. This is actually his Mimeoplasm Dredge deck. It's awesome. It's actually built around Trevor's favorite card, Life from the Loam, which has an awesome ability called Dredge. Now, Dredge, which I'll just pull up right here, if a card with Dredge N is in your graveyard, you may put N cards from the top of your library into your graveyard, return that card to your hand instead of drawing a card from your library. Basically, if you're going to draw a card at any point, including multiple draws at once, you can instead mill the top 3 cards or mill the top X cards and return that card to your hand. Really awesome ability, and I'll show you what we did with it in this deck. But first, let's talk about the general. The Mimeoplasm. For 2, green, blue, black. He's straight out of the Plane Chase decks. Enters the battlefield, you may exile 2 creature cards from your graveyards. Any graveyard. If you do, enters the battlefield as a copy of one of those cards with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the power of the other card. What's actually really important about this card that a lot of people don't realize is that even though it's copying the 2 cards, it also does a great job of exiling problem cards. So sometimes you might get a copy of like a really awesome creature, but then exile something like a duplicate just because even though it might not give you the most +1/+1 counters, you do exile the card from the game, which is really awesome, and it'll do a really good job. So that's the Mimeoplasm. It's built around milling cards into your graveyard so that you can then abuse them. With that, we have a lot of really important dredgers. The first one being Life from the Loam. There is a land theme. Not land theme, but we like to have a lot of mana in this deck. You can see we're running 39 lands. So, that's the idea. So Life from the Loam, very important in this deck. You're going to see mentioned a lot when we're talking about cards, especially retrace cards, which we're going to get to. But as far as our actual dredgers, we have Dakmor Salvage, which is dredge on a land. We have Graveshell Scarab, which is lots of value. Used to be better when you could stack damage. Not as good as it was back in its limited environment, but it's still a great card. Lets you draw cards with a dredger in your graveyard, so really important. Hermit Druid is a card. God, this card is busted. Basically, only the cards in front of you, but you reveal cards on the top of your library until you reveal a basic. Put that card into your hand, and all other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. Really, really, really good. I'm only running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm running 9 basics. Wow, I'm running 9 basics. So, especially when you're already used to cards like Cultivate, it's really easy to mill like 30 cards into your graveyard with this guy. He's a really big target because that's what he does. You mill almost half your deck with 1 activation. He's really awesome. This deck does have a way to shuffle cards back into it, thankfully. We're talking about Primal Command, which might be useful if you almost mill yourself out with Hermit Druid. So there's a backup, which is really good. Anyways, we also have Fauna Shaman. She's gonna be really good in finding dredgers and putting them into the graveyard. Splinter Fright abuses using dredge, but is also great at milling the top 2 cards. Strata Innistrad, fantastic card. Might even see it in standard, maybe, don't know yet. But really, really, really good. By the way, this is being recorded before Return to Ravnica comes out. I'm going to mention that because the Golgari Guild is going to have a lot of cards that would go directly into this deck. Golgari Grave Troll, the big baddie of Legacy. He has a dredge number of 6, and you can actually cast him in this format, which is awesome. He just ends up being like an 8/8 for 5. Undertaker, off-use card. It's a spell shaper. It does a really great job of you can discard dredgers to get back other cards and discard the dredger again. Really functions really well in this deck. Really like this card. Good card. Corpse Connoisseur, again, another way to get dredgers into the graveyard. So, we have all these dredgers. What are we going to do when we're milling half of our library into our graveyard? Well, the first thing that popped up to me is to immediately link it with flashback cards. So, cards like Army of the Dead, Increasing Ambition, which is from Dark Ascension, which will let us Demonic Tutor. We have Moan the Unhallowed to get some blockers out there. Sever the Bloodline is a great card. If you're not playing it yet, I would definitely suggest playing it it becomes a lot easier to return creatures from the graveyard. This card is going to become a lot more important, so remember that. Additionally, Creeping Renaissance will let us get all our creatures back from our graveyard or all our lands if we want to. Spider Spawning, I haven't tried it out yet, but I can't wait to play it. Tracker's Instincts, again, is going to mill cards from the top of our library. Forbidden Alchemy does the same thing. Snapcaster Mage is going to be a great job of flashing back really awesome spells that we have in this deck, and we have a lot of really awesome spells. Cackling Counterpart and Worm Harvest. Alright, so let's talk about Retrace and Life from the Loam. Retrace is a really cool ability. It came out in Eventide. I'll pull it up on the screen. It lets you, when a card with Retrace is in your graveyard, you can cast that card by discarding a land card, in addition to paying its extra cost. So let's say I Spitting Image something for 4 green green. I make a copy of a creature. Let's say we make a copy of Rampaging Baloths, right? Spitting Image is now in our graveyard. Let's say we have a land in hand next turn. We discard a land and cast Spitting Image again for its cost, targeting Rampaging Baloths. As we continue to do this, we can just bring back the lands with Life from the Loam and continue cycling Retrace. It's a really, really, really good interaction. One of the things this deck is built around, that and Worm Harvest. Worm Harvest is really good in this deck. It's definitely one of the win conditions. Watch out for this card. I can't wait to draw it every single time I play this deck. So this guy, really important. Then we have a small reanimation suite, just because we are playing a reanimation deck. You have your Dance from the Dead, Animate Dead. Buried Alive is going to get our Dredgers into our graveyard, which is going to be really useful. Coffin Queen puts creature cards from a graveyard onto the battlefield. You get it as long as Coffin Queen is tapped. Although fragile, really, really worth it. And if all else fails, she can just exile a creature for 2 and a black, so that's nice. Victimize, I really like this card. It's very often you have a creature on the battlefield you just want to sacrifice. I'm looking at you, Solemn Simulacrum, and you get back 2 creatures, which really helps. I just really like this card. Makeshift Mannequin, instant speed, reanimate, really good. Beacon of Unrest, but Profane Command I think is going to do the most work for us. Being able to kill a creature and bring a creature back is just really, really, really strong. Our next column, this one right here, is basically cards that really interact well with Dredge. I'm just going to go over a few of them. Cards you might not be playing that you might want to consider. Grim Discovery is more than likely going to hit for both. It's going to bring us back a creature and a land. It's going to be useful. Keswick Cagebreakers, I really can't wait. It's kind of a win condition, but not strong enough to be in the win condition aisle. Whenever it attacks, we're going to put wolves onto the battlefield, attacking for each creature in our graveyard. It's very possible we might be bringing this guy back instead of a card like Geth. Vulturous Zombie, whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard, although it doesn't interact with our Dredge, it's still a fantastic card. I'm actually going to put it into the win condition pile. Lord of Extinction is going to be huge. Boom Tube is going to be boom-tastic in this deck. I can't wait to play him. This guy is going to be big, very, very big. Memory Plunder can cast an instant or sorcery from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. Move that over here into that pile. Visions. This is really going to be an ancestral recall for us pretty much all the time. Bone Horde, fantastic. Mortivore on a stick, or I guess a Lihurgoyf. Card's really, really, really good. I would suggest playing it, especially in a deck like this. So it's in there. Here's a small pocket of lands. We really want to use cards like with our Retrace, our Worm Harvest, and our Spitting Image, because it's definitely one of our win conditions is abusing these 2 cards. So cards like Burgeoning, which lets you play lands from your hand whenever an opponent plays a land, is going to give us a really fast early start. Yavimaya Elder is going to bring us cards to our hand. Oracle, let us play us at the top. Realms Uncharted is a card I want to talk about in this deck. Although it's not Fact or Fiction, it's not Gifts and Given because that card is banned. It's going to do a lot of good things to this deck. We have multiple ways to just get like Command Tower, Reflecting Pool, and 2 Vivids is going to, no matter what, they have to give us 2 cards that are going to tap for all our colors, which is going to be really useful. This deck, because of Life from the Loam, which Realms and Life from the Loam love each other, because of Life from the Loam, though, really has a lot of utility lands. Because of that, Realms is going to do a really good job. Maze of Iths, Fogs, there's just a bunch of stuff I can get. So Realms is going to be great in this deck. Then our Cultivate, Kadama Reach, and Solemn. As far as win conditions, again, Vulturous Zombie gets big real fast. But cards like Geth, Avenger, and Rampaging Baloths are going to be really good in this deck because there is the land theme right here. Then we have Rude Awakening. We're going to have lots of lands. You can see, Life from the Loam is going to let us play a lot of lands. And at the same time, we have 39 lands in here. So Rude Awakening will be able to kill people. Then Glean Crawler is just really good just with creatures in play, and as is Rexiel. Rexiel is just going to deal a lot of damage to our opponents, which is going to be awesome. And then finally, we're just going to get to the utility cards. Cards I really like playing in decks like this that are kind of controlling, but allow us to survive to the late game. Avatar Woe is like that. We are going to have 10 or more creatures in our graveyard, so card's going to work. Necrogenesis is going to give us Saprolings and Exile cards. Usually I might play something a little bit cheaper, maybe like a Withered Wretch might be better in this deck, but I want to try out Necrogenesis. My friends always suggest it, so this is going to be the deck that's going to play it. Mold Drifter for the card drawing and the body. Damnation to kill everything, just in case we need to. We have the joy of being able to bring it back, so Damnation is going to be really good in our deck. And Puppeteer Click is in there. Just for the persist ability, I would love to be able to persist Mimeoplasm, because then he's going to come back into play. That's pretty much it. I'm not really going to go over the lands. I am actually going to throw up in the comments section, I'm just going to throw up the actual deck using MTG URL, so that you'll be able to see the actual deck list down there. I'm not going to put it into these little I might put it into the columns. I'll put it into the columns. It'll take a little bit longer, but I'll put it into the columns so you can have it open while I go over this. That's pretty much the build of the deck. There are a lot of lands. There aren't as many spells, so there is not a large possibility. There is a possibility to get flooded with this deck, which is something to remember. But I really like it. I've already played a couple of games with it. It works really well. It's very scary, but it does a good job also just kind of sitting back and then just winning with Worm Harvest, which, God, winning with Worm Harvest is awesome. So yeah, that's a deck tech. I can't wait to put up a gameplay video with it soon, hopefully. But right now, let's get this guy uploaded, and I'm going to enter a queue soon. Just not on video. So hey, the best way to get new videos is actually just to subscribe. Again, I put these out very infrequently. I do go to college right now, so I don't really have the time. I should actually be studying for an Orco test instead of doing this, so as shown. But I really like this deck, and I wanted to show you how I built it, because I've seen a lot of ways to build Mimeoplasm, and this is my version. So I would definitely suggest trying it out. I love the Dredge plus Retrace interaction. There are other Retrace cards. It wasn't a very popular ability when it first came out, or keyword, so there aren't a lot of cards with it. Basically, Worm Harvest and Spitting Image are the best of the two. The other ones didn't really make it into the deck. Anyways, feel free to follow us on Twitter at @MTGRadio. If you have any deck ideas, or you just want to send me a message, you can do that through the YouTube channel. I do get an email about that, so easy that way. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you continue to watch. I don't really have a sign-off term. I go to USF. Here it is. Come, get up. Yes, you. All right. Bye.